Well, he released he called it the easier and defanged version. Um, I mean, I really respect that. He's good. The build quality is top notch. He knows what he's doing. He's obviously, a fan of video games in general. And if you think of games that we all buy and like the trophies that you have to get, that you can earn on PlayStation Network, and some of them are impossibly hard, and we'll sit there for hours to earn those. But then again, you got a LBP community level that's that hard, and everybody hates it. So we're kind of, as consumers, we're sort of two-faced.
Yeah.
And so he made a level that he wanted to play, and I really respect that. Even though I just wanted to completely flush my PSP down the toilet, I really think he did a fantastic job. And the easier version is still harder than I can't finish it. And there's like hidden trophies in there and like special achievements, and like most people didn't get them all. I think there's only a couple people actually got all the trophies.
I think I got one, and that was when I did all the challenges. So it's...
Yeah. And that's how a good game is actually made. Like if you're trying to build a game and sell it, that's what you want. You want something that's going to keep people engaged for, weeks, not, minutes. Like a typical mobile game is very easy to finish in like a few days, to get all the stuff you could ever possibly get in it. Whereas a game that's on a more dedicated console is usually a lot tougher.
We might have to agree to disagree on the way the original version of the level was made, though, because I still think...
it's impossible.
There were challenging things about it which were good, but there were also things about it which were... wasn't really to make it hard. It was just like something that was... I still come back to that elevator, and there was a part later on where he said he wanted to get an Indiana Jones feel to it, and so you platform up this, like, impossible platforming section. I forget what all you had to do, but it was very difficult. It probably took me 20 minutes to get up there, and right when you get up there, something just swung down and killed you. And
I remember that. Yeah.
There was no save point up there. There was no warning it was going to happen. I mean, there was no way that your reaction time would be fast enough, just because, you had no idea it was going to come. And even if you knew it was going to come, it probably would have still been hard to dodge.
Right.
And I mentioned that specifically in my feedback, and he said he wanted to get an Indiana Jones feel, and I said, yeah, that kind of thing just... there's hard, and then there's just... there's no way you could dodge that. That's just like... I've never played a game where you spend 20 minutes and someone walks up and shoots you in the head because you're supposed to push A, but they never told you you're supposed to push A.
Yeah, I'd agree. The thing about the Indiana Jones feel... I do remember him saying that, and my argument was, well, Indiana Jones lived. So, maybe it's a little too hard. But it's quite clearly not my kind of level in any way. And I still rated him very high on that, just because he's got his thing that he wants to make, and he stuck to it, and he did a fabulous job on it.
Yeah, it's an awesome level, and the defanged version, I would advise everyone to go try it, and if you really want to get the crap beat out of you, try the original, and also try all his levels. Ten Robbie is one of my favorite levels, and that was the newest level by him. So
yeah, that is a absolutely fantastic level. He's really got the skills. He knows what he's doing. So everybody, go play that one. You'll like it, and then don't blame us when you break your PSP. Our next section is topic of the podcast, and we are both going to have to limit ourselves for what we want to say about this one, because we could do an entire podcast on only this topic. Mm-hmm. So we may even have to continue this one in episode 3. I'm not sure. So this topic of the podcast is playing Little Big Planet on the PSP versus playing Little Big Planet on the PS3.
Yeah, and this is... I've written a bunch of long posts, and
very long.
even make a blog post on Little Big Land about my love for the PSP version. So I've always been... I guess I wouldn't be so strongly outspoken about it, except that a lot of the people on the PS3 side of things just disregard PSP, because right when it came out they bought it, and it was terribly broken. And a lot of things changed in the following 2 months. They released a number of patches that fixed just about everything. So it was always painful for me to hear these people. It's fine with me if you want to say that the PS3 version's better, and I can see where you're coming from depending on what you want, especially for multiplayer and such.
Yeah.
And, the create mode is still more stable than the PSP version is. But, just treating the PSP version like it's the worst thing ever, that's just not even... it's not fair, especially if someone who might be interested in the PSP version but has no idea whether they should get it or not.
Well, that's right, and it comes down. So here's how I look at it. If Little Big Planet PS3 never existed, I bet you that the Little Big Planet community would be as big as it is just because of the PSP version. I mean, it's that good of a game. It's one of the top 3 games on the platform, period. It is fantastic. And the only reason people don't like it is because it's not as good as the other greatest game ever created for the PS3, Little Big Planet, right?
Yeah, and I mean, some of the things people rip on it for are just stupid, like graphics. I mean, of course the graphics aren't going to be as good. And
Right.
no water. Things like water, the Paintinator, you just can't do that on the PSP because it just
Right.
can't handle it. And I mean, there's still people, well, I guess until they announced no more DLC, there were still people saying, oh, when's the Paintinator coming and when's water coming? And I mean,
Oh
you
my
just had to
gosh.
expect they couldn't do that. They can't add multiplayer. But when you
No.
have what you have, I mean, there are things about it that are awesome. I mean, one little tiny thing that's awesome about it is the corner editing tool is actually a lot better on it, which I'm really surprised that they didn't update on Little Big Planet 2, or did they, to make it better on there?
I don't think they did. I actually have a very hard time using the corner editor now on the PS3, which I used to use it a lot, and I never realized exactly. It's hard to really put your finger on how good the corner editor is on the PSP until you go back. It's just a lot more precise. It's a lot more responsive. You can select multiple corners and drag. You can create a corner without having to drag it anywhere. So you can click and make a corner in a straight line and then come and get it later. Whereas on the PS3, it won't remember it unless you drag it somewhere. And then like the shape changes and freaks out. So there's a lot of things they did really, really well. And the static versus dynamic material, I mean, come on. That right there is worth the price of admission.
Yeah.
No, you don't have to glue dark matter to everything. I am absolutely shocked they did not implement that for Little Big Planet 2. I really am.
I forget who I was talking to. It might have even been you, but someone said they thought the reason they didn't do it was just because they had to carry the levels over from the original Little Big Planet, and they would get pretty confused if it had to track dark matter for those and not track it for the new ones. I don't know.
I'm sure that's exactly why they did it. But then again, I mean, this is me not understanding how to code a game, so I'm just talking out of one side of my mouth. I don't see why you couldn't just say, okay, all existing LBP1 levels, every material is considered set to dynamic, except for dark matter, which is set to static. Period. Done. And import them that way. Because it is the easiest thing ever. Like, when I go into PS3 and create, I continually make the mistake. I forget to glue stuff to a little chunk of dark matter, and I forget what a hassle that actually is. And we've all gotten used to it. And coming from
Sally
the
Spotlight, I remember when we built that set piece, I remember I didn't set any. I I didn't glue anything or anything, and I realized, oh my gosh, it's all going to fall down.
Oh, I kept unpausing it, and we squished ourselves because all the stuff came falling down. It's like, oh, jeez, you got to be kidding me.
Oh, but that brings up a point that points towards the PS3 version being better, and that's the rewind. It is.
Yes.
I mean, you get used to not being able to rewind on PSP. I mean, you can rewind, but you get used to not doing it because when you do rewind, it tends to break the level.
Yes,
so,
it does tend to break the level, and it's not very reliable at all.
It's so nice to have that rewind. I mean, I remember when we were building there, you and I, in create mode for the Spotlight, it was so strange to just be able to rewind. Because, I mean, whenever I rewound, it was like, cross your fingers, hold your breath, and we'll see what happens.
Well, I got to the point on the PSP where I just turned it off. Because I pretty much never rewind ever. I haven't rewound intentionally since probably January.
Well, I mean, they made an update so you could shut off rewinding just because it was so unstable.
Exactly. I mean, it would rewind only certain things. Like, it wouldn't rewind necessarily like a sticker, but it would rewind a deleted object or something like that. It wouldn't always work. So anyway, there's lots of good things for both, and I just think it's because people have come from the PS3 version and they've gotten used to the things that they're used to, and it is not worse. It is different.
Yeah, and there are little things like, changing the size of objects, rotating objects, where you start having to use the L and R buttons while you're using the analog stick. That kind of thing can be really confusing at first, but I mean, give it a week and it'll be second nature.
Well, and you can zoom in and out when you're resizing and stuff, which you can on the PS3 version.
Mm-hmm.
Which I'm a big fan of that. That's you start thinking that, hey, there's only one stick, I'm kind of screwed, but actually, pretty handy.
Yeah, it all really works together well. It's amazing that they got all the controls you had on the PS3 to work on the PSP in create mode. I was sure they'd have to cut a bunch out, but they really managed to carry it all over.
Yep, I think they did a fantastic job. All right, so our next section, create tips. So I think we're going to keep this one pretty short and sweet. So create tips this time around, and this sort of applies to both versions of LittleBigPlanet, or all three if you count the beta. And that is optimizing the thermometer and reducing lag.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of different things that you can do. It really just boils down to smart level building and not wasting, game memory resources if you don't need to, and just understanding that everything that you put in there, the game has to keep track of. So if the player's not going to see it, make it ugly and make it simple, and the level will perform that much better because of it.
And there's obvious things that all the time you see, well, I don't know as much anymore, but you see people posting about, I'm having thermo issues. What can I do to reduce it? Because I'm only a quarter of the way through my level and I'm already at 90% thermo, which if you're there, you're probably in big trouble. I mean, the things that people say more often than not is just limit the number of materials you use.
Mm-hmm.
That can make a huge difference. The number of switches, the variety of switches, the number of switches, things like that make a huge difference. But, I mean, that's the kind of thing that most people already know. But there's a few things that people may have heard but not done. For instance, if you have things going on in the background, like tech or something, instead of using squares or definitely not using circles, you can just make everything into a triangle. And I mean, if you just do that to a few things, it's not going to make a big difference. But as you do it to everything in the background, you can see a huge difference.
That does make a really, really big difference. More so, I think, on the PS3 than on the PSP is the number of vertices, it seems.
I haven't even experimented with it much on PS3 because I only started trying to get rid of them to save thermo on the PSP. I wish I'd done on the PS3 because the last 4 levels I made were all maxed out, so I got limiting it. But
one of the best tips overall that you said is just reducing the number of materials, and that's something that Jack, of course, has had in his guide to creating in LittleBigPlanet. He made a PSP version of the guide that had the same advice, and that's to when you're building a level, pick a kind of a palette of materials. Like pick a couple of matching materials, pick a good grabbable one, pick a good non-grabbable one, pick 5 or 6 stickers that go with the color scheme, and build the whole level using only that.
Now, do you think that the limiting materials, is as big of an issue on PSP as it was on PS3?
I would say it's pretty close to equal. Maybe not quite. The PS3 really seems to be impacted by the number of materials quite heavily.
Yeah, see, I thought the PS3 was, I mean, you could tell the PS3 was, but on the PSP, when I built my first few levels, I was super careful about materials. But then, I mean, I didn't really notice a big difference. I noticed people were making these big levels, like Leonard, I believe, made a level, which just had, I mean, there were different materials everywhere. And I was like, how is he doing this? So I tried it out for myself, and it seemed to me it didn't make a big difference if I used a lot of materials. I mean, I'm sure it was doing something to the thermo, but nothing compared to the PS3, where when you go crazy with materials, I mean, it is very taxing on your thermo.
Yes. No, it does add up pretty quick. A little experiment that you can do, and I'm not going to say it's cheating the thermometer, because some people will advise against it, and it will actually begin to make your PSP crash if you keep messing with this, but is to take a level that you have that's maxed out, and this should work also on the PS3 or the PSP, is just go through and change all the materials to one type of material, like basic wood. Just start using the material changer and change everything. And you'll notice the thermometer start to drop.
Mm-hmm.
That works quite very well on the PSP. On the PS3, it depends on what else you have going on. It may or may not work. But
I guess, I mean, that proves, I mean, you could easily tell how much thermo it's taking up then. So have you done that before?
Actually, yes. That's I did that for the finishing touches on the Kindred Prologue level. We had huge problems with material-related thermo because of all of our signatures that we had. And so I wasn't using it to cheat the thermometer, but it was overheated. You couldn't move a sticker, or like I put a sticker in the wrong place and I needed to move it, you could pick it up, but you couldn't put it back down.